Alright, everyone, it is officially late at night, therefore, it is time for ghost stories. And to start off, I thought I would explain why I both believe, in a way, in ghosts and am not scared of them. Starting with a little bit of family lore, and also a bit of a preface. So, since I grew up in more of a religious family, I understand it. I'm very aware that I have a more religious framework around how I see the world. If you hear my story and I'm like, that doesn't make any sense for my framework, definitely just, if you have a framework that makes more sense for these stories, definitely let me know. If it turns out I have schizophrenia or something like that, just like say, hey man, you kind of sound like you have schizophrenia. Just go ahead and let me know. Maybe give me a few tips on like how I could diagnose that. But basically, let's just get into it, okay? Let's starting off with some family lore. So my mom, back whenever she was a little kid, she didn't have the best upbringing, and one of her comforts, I guess, was being able to just chat and chill, talking to God. So she recalls it as if he was actually physically there, and she could sense his presence. She would understand whenever he was like hovering close, and she could be like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing. Do you want to play with me? Do you want to do these things?" And then she'd just spend time with him. And so that's kind of how I grew up hearing stories like that. And so I was like, okay, this is something you can do, apparently. But the thing is, I never really experienced spiritual things like that myself. I never really felt like there were any creatures around me. I never really felt like there was like I could ever talk physically with God. I just didn't feel it. So I didn't understand what she meant, but I was like, apparently this is something you can do. And then whenever I was like 11, this is where I think a bit of like spiritual belief mixes with a bit of just paranoia and stuff like that, because I am well aware that I likely have ADHD, and I know one of the symptoms of ADHD is having intense paranoia. So I'm just letting you know, I'm not saying I believe in this kind of stuff. I'm just kind of putting on the framework so that you can understand the eventual the eventual story that leads me to this. So basically, whenever I was like 11, maybe 10, something like that, I became, well, even whenever I was like 5 or something, I really didn't like whenever toys stared at me. It probably had to do with watching Toy Story and like projecting my own thoughts onto them to such an extent that I was like, I don't want to change in front of these things while they're staring at me. I don't want to sleep in front of these things while they're staring at me. So I kind of had a habit of turning my toys around, so they wouldn't stare at me whenever I was changing or anything like that. And that was kind of the case for most of my childhood. But the reason I bring up like age 10 to 11 is because at my previous house, I got this like How to Train Your Dragon stickers. With Toothless and the Hiccup guy, and I put them on my wall because I liked How to Train Your Dragon at the time. And for some reason, the moment that they were on my wall, it bothered me to such a massive extent. It was like I could not think properly, and so for multiple days I was like, you're just imagining things, you're just imagining things. It's like the characters are staring at me, but it doesn't mean they're actually staring at me. So this is you gotta understand, this is fine, because I was self-aware enough to understand I was kind of hallucinating the uncertain feeling. So, but eventually it did get so jarring that I scratched the stickers off the wall because I specifically went for their eyes too, so I scratched their eyes off the wall, and which felt kind of sad because I liked the characters, I just didn't like them staring at me. And so ever since then, anytime someone has given me like pictures with like people in them, or like, I guess for some reason owls are like an exception, because I have lots of owls and stuff like that in lots of pictures, and they're like technically staring right at me, but I don't really feel the same way, I guess. Maybe it's more like, I don't know. Anyways, so there's just a lot of things I have to do. Most of my toys and stuffed animals, I still like technically have them from childhood. I just keep them under my bed. My bed's up there. So my toys are like down there, and they're just kind of hiding in a corner. I don't really like have them around. Obviously that's just because I'm like an older woman now. So, but even whenever I was younger, I kind of had the habit of storing them away whenever I wasn't like playing with them. I guess whenever things get a little weird is at age 15. Like, I'll put a picture on screen to prove it, because a long time ago I basically had this feeling, just this thought, just this feeling that felt real, that I felt like either two major things were going to happen. Either I was going to die in the year 2027, or I was going to like fall in love, get married, or something like that. Into the, like one of those extremes. I just was like, on my birthday, I just remember not being able to talk to anyone. I was just very quiet, very reserved, and I just had this very intense feeling, which was new to me then, but I've had it multiple times since. But which I'll explain. But basically, that was like the first time I can remember having that kind of moment. And then from that, I felt like, okay, I'm either going to die in the year 2027, or I'm going to, like, something irreversibly amazing is going to happen in 2027. I don't know which one. I just know it's going to be intense. So, I just to prove it, because I felt like I was so sure that I put in my Wattpad notes, I just put the year 2027, and so I'll make sure to show that on screen just as kind of proof. You can even go to my Wattpad channel, and you'll find it there. It's just a really old message I left for myself, basically. I guess I would say I also had a lot of other paranoia, stuff like that. Like, but that's a lot more explainable for just being paranoia. Like, for instance, anytime someone drives by me in their car, I imagine them, just like instinctively, I imagine them pointing a gun at me. So, and that has been existing ever since I was like a little kid. And so anytime, someone drives by, or they're gonna kidnap me or something, anytime I walk by someone, I imagine they're like gonna stab me or something. That's why I always carry a knife and all this kind of stuff. So, and that's kind of, I don't know, it's just something that like I have grown comfortable with. Like, I've been paranoid for so long that whenever I'm not paranoid is whenever I start to freak out, because I'm so used to always feeling like everyone's going to attack me, that whenever I don't feel that way, or I actually feel a little bit comfortable, I'm like, something's going on. What the heck is going on? Why is everyone suddenly tolerable to be around? Yeah, so I guess that's also something that might explain a bit of my lore. Now it's time to kind of get into the supernatural more aspects, because again, where I've already established that I have this paranoia, so there's a reason for me to be like, okay, this is definitely my brain just making it up. But I guess I'll start with the most likely, just some sort of imaginary thing. Whenever I go to sleep, autism, I have this very specific regiment of things I do right before bed, and I do them at these specific places, facing these very specific angles. Like, everything is always put in its exact spot, otherwise I go crazy. No one would really want to be my roommate, is what I'm saying. So, anyways, I always used to do stretches, like in that specific spot, facing that specific way out my door, so that way I could see. And it was just, okay, one thing I guess I should also establish is I never watch horror movies. Whenever I have nightmares, like even whenever I was really little, like 5 or 6, I realized that I could literally just let myself die in my nightmares, and then I would stop having them, and I would even conquer the whatever dream. Like, if there was a spider chasing me, a massive spider, and I just kind of turned around and let it eat me, then I would conquer my fear of spiders in real life. And same with snakes and all these other kinds of things. Like, if they were chasing me, and I'd just be like, wait a minute, I can just let them eat me or something, and then I'd wake up and I'd be like, I'm not scared of them anymore, let's go. So with that in mind, also, I've never seen horror movies, never read any horror things, nothing like that. So that's probably one reason why it's a little bit creepier whenever certain like a scary kind of things happen, because I'm like, there's no framework for this. Like, I haven't been absorbing anything scary. I don't even listen to horror stories or anything like that. So, anyways, so I'm stretching. It's a regiment that I do, and suddenly there's this little pale, tiny about toddler-sized, pale, thin creature runs up at me. Attacks my side specifically, and I feel this almost pain. Like, it feels similar to when you get shot in a dream, and like it feels kind of like oh, I'm gonna die, like the sudden kind of like slight sting feeling, but it's fake. So anyways, I felt that whenever it attacked my side, and then I was like, What the heck just happened? But and so and the following night it happened again. The following night it happened again. Eventually, I just told myself, okay, I'm going to face the other way whenever I do my stretches, because I do not want to have to deal with that little creepy monster. And guess what? It went away. I no longer have that thing. It was just that one time. But sometimes I'll look down the hall when it's night, and I'll just remember, and I'll remember the slight pain, and I'll be like, oh, what the heck? What the heck even was that? So, I don't think that one was spiritual at all. I think that was more so just a little bit of my brain was a bit freaking up. I was around 17, I think, whenever that happened. So, but maybe even 18. I'm 23 right now, just for current record. I think the most weirdest thing is that around this time, sort of, I was starting to because my mom said she could sense these things. So that's the best way I can describe me just sensing presences. It's kind of hard to explain, but whenever you're standing next to someone, they're barely in your peripheral vision, but you can kind of sense that they're there just by some sick, you just know someone's behind you, even if they're not making any sounds or anything like that. I started to feel that way, but even when no one was around me. And I projected heavily onto this when I was a kid. I was in my Minecraft Herobrine phase. So eventually, after feeling these weird presences, and they felt neutral, by the way, because there's such thing as a positive presence, a neutral presence, and a negative presence, and I felt all three of them. The most common one was just a neutral presence, which the best way I can describe as gray. There was one in particular that I would always sense whenever I came home from work or something like that, and I would come through the drive-thru, and I felt right, so the drive-thru's here. It was right over there. It's in the grassy field, and I could feel that it was about roughly 30 feet tall. It was gray and very slender, but I couldn't tell what exact shape it was. I just knew that it was kind of rounded but top thin. Anyways, and it felt neutral. Or some kind of guardian or something like that. So you could say guardian angel. You could say whatever you want, I guess. Whatever you agree with. That's all I'm saying. But what I'm saying, it actually disappeared a couple years ago though. So, but I would sense that thing. I used to kind of wave at it because I didn't. I was just I know there's something there. I can't see it, but I sense it. I feel like it's gray. That's all I could understand about it. But there were also other things too, anytime I entered a new building, I could usually feel some kind of presence about it, I could feel some sort of way about it, or whenever certain people passed, I could feel some kind of presence around them, or something like that, and sometimes it felt insanely wicked, or sometimes it would feel insanely positive. Sometimes I almost thought I was falling in love with someone just because I was standing next to someone. I was like, oh, your presence is so nice, but I haven't even spoken to you. Or even I don't even really think you look nice. I just think your presence is so wholesome. And then I'd be like, wait a minute. It's just because you have the presence of a very nice person, and I'm not falling in love. I'm just sensing that. And yes, so yeah. And I guess to branch off this is I don't one thing I'm gonna say is my mom has a similar feeling. Basically, imagine what I'm feeling, except she has it way more intense, to the point where she can very distinctly explain what a certain entity is. So I could just kind of feel whether it was neutral or positive or whatever, but she could walk into a building and say, oh, there's a spirit of intense pornography. We're leaving. That was she, or it's something like that. But she rarely ever told us what it was. I would usually just sense that she felt uncomfortable, and then I would look at her, and then she'd be like, okay, we're gonna do something else, and then maybe and then I'd ask her, hey mom, why did we go all of a sudden? And she just I just didn't feel comfortable. I just felt like there was a bad presence in there. It's okay, we're not getting the only time that I did get a very direct explanation was because whenever I was younger, I used to teens, older teens in high school, I would go have sleepovers with my friend a lot, because homeschool, I only have one friend I can actually spend the night over at, because I barely had any friends, and so But eventually my mom said that I couldn't like sleep there anymore, and I was like, "Oh, what's wrong? What's wrong? What happened?" But she didn't tell me. But then years later, I asked her, hey, what was that about? And I'm not gonna tell you, but she explained to me the very specific spirit she sensed in the house. And then I told my friend, and my friend was like, how did she know? How did she know that was what was going on in the house? It was something very personal, so I'm not gonna bring it up or anything, but it was intense. It was one of the moments where I was like, wait, is this stuff real? Have I like not been hallucinating this whole time? I thought I was just hallucinating this whole time, but what? It can be true? And I think that's whenever my paranoia started to mix with questioning as to whether or not what I was sensing was true. Because I've always assumed it was fake, or that my brain was making up stuff, or it was some sort of mental issue. But then whenever my mom had that thing, and my friend confirmed it was true, I started to be like, oh, there's probably something a little bit more to this if you're able to actually predict things. So, I'm still, yeah, well, I guess chapter 2, haha. And so we get to the part where I'm roughly 19, 20 years old, maybe a little bit younger, 18, around that age, and I'm starting to, I don't know how to say this, predict death. So, like, okay, I've never told the public this, anything like that. I've asked people in my life if it was okay if I told this story, and they said yes. So I've always felt like, I could technically, but I still don't want to monetize it, because I don't want to be like, ooh, sorry me, I don't, donate to me or whatever. So, but basically, someone died in front of me, and I knew it was gonna happen. Or technically not, but okay, so we were on a lake. It was someone's birthday. We were all enjoying ourselves, and I had this bad feeling. I didn't know how to describe it. I was also wrestling with depression at the time, so I felt like, oh, I must just be insanely depressed, because that's kind of what it feels like. Like, it just feels like this huge, very dense wave of depression just like settles on you to the point where, but this was the most intense it ever felt in my, like, I can't even describe. Like, it was so intense, I could not physically speak. If I tried to talk to you whenever I was sensing that, I would look at you and I would try to form the words, but they could not form into proper sentences. The only thing I could communicate were feelings. Or, like, it's just a blur of feelings to such an extent that you can't put them into normal human words. And later, as I got older, I figured out how to alleviate this feeling, but since this was the first time, I was roughly 18 years old, maybe 19, and so I was at this park, and I just felt this intense feeling fall over me. I was in a canoe, just having my fun. I love canoeing, but it was so intense, and I could not speak to anyone, I could not look at anyone, I could not hang out. People were, like, calling to me, trying to ask me, hey, do you want to hang out? Do you want to go over here to this? And I left. I rowed out into the middle of the lake, and I sat there for a good 30 minutes, just being like, just like very, very shaky, very hazy kind of feeling, very like, what do I do with this? It's so intense. I don't know how to go about this. And then halfway through, I was like, wait a minute, I'm a Christian. I come from a Christian background. We're supposed to pray when times like this happen. So I started, praying, just like very, very quietly. And it did kind of alleviate the feeling, just enough that I could properly think thoughts instead of thinking emotions, because there's a difference. So I could think thoughts again, and as I was praying, I would kind of like quiet down and calm down. But it was, oh, hello. Just a moment, sorry. My mum was telling me goodnight. Okay, so basically, it was very intense. And then, so as I was mid-prayer, I'd been at it for like 10 minutes straight. In total, I was probably on the lake for like 40 minutes just floating around. Excuse me. And I just felt this sudden cutout feeling. like it's too late. But not in like a you did anything wrong or there's something bad or something like that. Like not even in a really negative sense. Like it's hard to explain, but it felt like it's too late, as in this time has already passed, almost kind of a thing. And so like it felt almost peaceful, but in like a very eerie kind of peaceful, if you know what I mean. And so after settling with this, and when it cut out, I was like, oh, I can suddenly think. Which is kind of weird to think about, but I could suddenly think. Like, whoa, my brain, I can actually function again. What the heck? So, I rowed back to shore, and then I see a dead body. And people are trying to resuscitate him, and they're not successful. And it is the birthday kid. It was his dad. My childhood friend. So, I don't want to make big of the story, but that kind of, it messed up everybody. just to say that. It kind of messed up everybody. And I felt, for a little bit, I knew not to take responsibility, because I know deep down it wasn't my fault, but there's a very small percentage of me that's like, oh, maybe if I prayed more, maybe if I started praying earlier, something like that, I could have somehow stopped this. But I always have to give myself grace, like, I didn't know what was going on, I didn't know what I should do, I only randomly decided to start praying because I didn't know what else to do. And so I know, you don't have to tell me in the comments, because I've been telling myself this for years, that it's not my fault or anything like that. And then, about a year later, I had this same feeling, except this time I woke up with it. This time I woke up, everyone was like waking up super early, we were gonna go on a trip to go like meet some people, and to actually meet our grandparents. So we woke up early, we were gonna go on a trip, everyone got in the car, the sun was up and everything like that, and I could barely think, I could barely speak. Whenever I did think, it was only in emotions, and I felt very unsettled. And everyone was starting to ask me if I was okay, what was wrong. And, like, they were, like, kind of letting me know, like, hey, you're acting a little bit quiet, are you okay? And I was like, mm-hmm. So that was kind of all I could do. But this time, it still took me a while, but eventually I realized, wait a minute, I recognize this feeling, and so I immediately started praying, and I was just, like, constantly just, like, under my breath praying, some of my siblings who heard me were like, what are you praying for? And I was just like, just like praying as fast but as quiet as I could. And then eventually, about 30 or so minutes of praying, we were in the car driving away, and I just felt again, a cutoff, but this time it was a more positive cutoff, and it was more like, you're good. you're good. You've done what you can, I guess, or like, you're good. And so I felt like more of a sense of peace, and I was like, okay, massive good thing. And so then, about an hour or so later, we got a call from our grandpa, and he said that earlier that morning, our grandma had a stroke and she almost died, but then she didn't. So that made me go like, okay, so this paranoia stuff that I've been living with for almost my whole life has now been proven at least somewhat plausible twice. That's kind of concerning, considering I could have mental problems, because, whenever things start to happen right, you're like, this is right, but I'm wise enough and smart enough to know that, okay, this doesn't mean that everything is therefore, something spiritual, something crazy like that. It could be a mix of multiple things going on at once, and I just am starting to learn how it all works. But that is basically story 2. And there's another story. Oh. Alright. So, this is where it gets a little bit creepy. Just gonna give you a bit of a warning. Because by this point, I've established that I have an intense paranoia that borders on, what's the disorder called? Schizophrenia. That borders on schizophrenia, and I'm about that age that a lot of young women develop schizophrenia anyways. So I've been very aware. I've done a lot of research into psychology and all this stuff and comparing my stories with other stories. So I don't feel like I have schizophrenia exactly. Like, my symptoms don't really match up to everyone else's symptoms, but I still, it's always a consideration, because I don't want to immediately think, oh my gosh, I can hear ghosts, I can hear people's thoughts, I can do all I don't want to be that kind of person. I want to be logical thinking. That's always been my thing, autism and everything. But anyways, I was asleep. My brother and I were left alone at the house, and it was roughly, because I have terrible sleep apnea, sleep problems. Usually I can barely go to sleep. Even if I get off my phone at, like, say 9, I still roll around in bed until around 3 a.m. This has just been a constant issue ever since I was, like, 15. And so I had gone to sleep around 3. I woke up sometime around 11. And it was not really woke up. I more of was, like, stirred awake. Like, I felt like someone was there. So I was like, huh? And I could hear it. Right? Like, so I was in that bed up there. Up there, about 6 feet up. I was in my bed. I was facing the wall. And behind me was the presence that I sensed. And it felt, ooh, my skin crawls just thinking about it. It felt squirmy. I don't want to. I don't like remembering that feeling. But anyways, it felt squirmy. It felt like a lot, as in multiple, and it had. Okay, this was the spirit that I woke up to. I'm gonna call it a spirit, even though it could be some hallucination. I woke up to, and it was whispering to, like, the back of my head or whatever, and it was saying so many things at once that they were all the things it was saying were drowning each other out, and I couldn't really comprehend everything it was saying. But the main voice, because it had like hundreds of voices that were all speaking at once, they were all drowning each other out, but the main voice was my brother's voice, the one that I was, he was the only other person in the house. But he was also asleep, or he was doing chores or something like that. He was at the time, he was not in the house, because later I got up and I was like, hey bro, where are you? And he was like, oh, I'm at work. And I was like, who the heck? Anyways, so, but I hear this voice, and it's like hundreds of these voices, and the main voice is my brother, and they're all, I could barely understand what they were all saying, but the gist of it was basically explaining every issue I've done, every small to large sin I've committed, every single thing, like things I'd forgotten, things I didn't care about, I didn't have any kind of standing, but all these list of thousands upon thousands of things, just rapid fire, boom, 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 and they were all saying all of these at once, with the explicit purpose trying to get me to kill myself. So, that was intense. And I was just like, sorry, can you repeat that? So I was extremely tired. So anyways, I was like, oh, okay. I went back to sleep. I turned around, there was nothing there, the voices cut out the moment I turned around, and I was like, there's nothing there. Okay, and then I just went back to sleep, bro. But then whenever I was in my dream, world where I felt a little safer, I had a literal panic attack in my dreams. It never happened before. Once I actually went to sleep in my dream world, I curled up in a ball and I was like, what the heck was that? I don't know what's going on. Is that even real? Like, what's going on? And so, yeah, that was a little intense. That's probably the closest thing I have to a horror story, I guess. Definitely very, very different from the little creature, the reoccurring one. That one felt a lot more like a hallucination, because it kept reoccurring. Most of it was just my memories would stir, because I think the first time could have potentially been somewhat true, but my brain is really inventive and, like, really creative and like, very visual remembering. So every time I looked down the hallway, I would remember it, and then the memory would be so intense, I would feel like I was experiencing it a second time, and then again and again, which is eventually why I just stopped looking down the hallway, because I felt like I would experience the same thing over and over again every time I did that. But this felt very different, because I haven't just, like, looked over, or I haven't felt like that again. And to put... like, I honestly don't know how I fell back to sleep, like, after the whole multiple voices things, because it isn't something, because, again, I haven't watched horror movies, I haven't been, experienced any of that, so it's very hard to describe to you the kind of fear that exists whenever that happens. I kind of had, like a while ago, I could kind of describe it, but I think I've forgotten how to describe it, but it's kind of like a feeling of this is real. Of like just something it just I don't know how to describe it. It's very different from any other fear that I've felt. From that, I was like, hey, yo, wait, if these ghosts are trying to get me to kill myself, then that means they have literally no power over me, and their only attack method is trying to get me to kill myself. So that means these guys are stupid, and they don't have any power, so I'm like goated and stuff. So that was kind of what I took away from that story, because I mean, at the end of the day, if all they can do is get me to hurt myself, and I simply choose not to, and then boom, I win. What are you gonna do about it, ghosts, huh? What are you gonna do about it? You gonna try to convince me to kill myself again? I don't feel like it. Then I guess the most recent experience I've a lot of these things happen around birthday parties. Do I just hate birthday parties? That could be part of it. But one time at my little sister's birthday party, it was at an event. Everyone was kind of enjoying it. It was one of those days where I woke up feeling kind of not like ill physically, but ill spiritually, if you understand what I mean. It's ill spiritually feels very different. It feels kind of like a fog, but not mental fog, because there is a mental fog, but there's also a spiritual fog, and I don't know how to explain the difference. Trust me, I've tried to explain the difference, but I can't. You just have to understand. It feels like big fog, spiritual. Anyways, so I woke up feeling kind of this way, and it took me a few hours before I was like, oh, this must be one of those times where I'm feeling something, but it was so intense during my little sister's party that I couldn't eat. I kept walking in circles around the table, and I kept trying to grab for food, but every time my hand I would like go away, like I couldn't even like process how I would consume the food. So I couldn't like, even if I grabbed the food, I just couldn't put it in my mouth and like eat it. It felt repulsive. Like almost like I was some sort of like rabies. Like I was some sort of creature with rabies trying to drink water, like like I couldn't do it. It was just really weird, but I could drink water, so I kept drinking lots of water because I was super hungry too. I was super hungry, but I couldn't eat, and I just kept drinking tons of water to kind of make up for it, drinking juice and other various things, and it was like halfway through the day, around 3 p.m., and I still wasn't able to eat anything. And I just kept intensely walking around the circle. Eventually, I was like, okay, I have to go outside because I don't want people to think I'm an absolute maniac. So I went outside and it was this large building they were having this like event at, And so I went outside by the parking lot. I kind of looked like a crackhead, just walking in circles and pacing for like an hour or so. Just very intensely praying under my breath and just saying the same phrases over and over again in my head. The phrases thing, like you're... Okay, I didn't explain this, but there's like a type of prayer. It kind of feels... I guess it'd be similar to like praying in tongues, where because it's the one way to make that like intense feeling go away is to just start praying these sounds. But like I get prompted like the sounds I'm supposed to make. Like I forgot what it was, like one of just like today, because the reason I'm sitting down is because I had one of those experiences like just earlier last night, and even though it was like 10 p.m. I went on a walk just recently, and I started walking in circles around the neighborhood, just like kind of being like, anyways. So, I know I'm gonna sound like a crazy person, but I don't know, the language thing, it doesn't sound like a proper language. I guess it sounds similar to a mix of like Japanese, Arabic. Wait, no, that's not a. Yeah, that's not a language. Wait. I'm so tired, bro. And German. So it sounds kind of like a mixture of those. Anyways, I'm so sorry, guys. Anyways, so I would just walk around in circles, praying very quietly, in this kind of like dialect or whatever. And yeah, I don't even know, because that was the longest time that because I realized earlier, like, sooner on, that I was like, oh, this is one of those times. That means I gotta start praying. So I started praying, and okay, wait, let me just say, before I started praying, it became so, because I was not able to eat food. But on top of that, I felt if it was so intense, I legitimately wondered if I had a stomach bug. Because I've had a stomach bug before, so the symptoms felt quite similar, where I was like kind of queasy and nauseous, and my mouth was kind of watery, and my jaw was a little bit tight, and just like the feeling you get before you throw up. And I just felt like that for like a while before I started praying, and the praying kind of made that feeling go down. But like right before, as I was getting to the antithesis, and I was like, okay, I definitely am feeling that way. I was legitimately wondering, should I go to the bathroom? I think I actually went to the bathroom multiple times, thinking I was gonna throw up, but then I didn't end up throwing up. So, but yeah, anyways, started praying. That intense feeling goes way down, but I still feel very inclined to continue praying, and then praying and 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 praying for like an hour straight, and I'm just walking in circles and doing all these, just like very, very, very rigid cycle. I remember I created a figure 8 pattern just because I wanted to do something slightly different. And so I'd pray like crazy. Anyways, finally, about an hour into this whole praying ritual, I just get this feeling, not that it was complete, but that the job of praying had gone over to someone else. So it felt more like I was passing on the baton to someone else. So, sorry whoever I passed it on to, I guess. Oops. Good luck with that one, buddy. But basically it was, I was just like, okay, I'm gonna pass that on. It was kind of like the weight was lifted off of me, and I felt like it was going somewhere else for someone else to continue praying. So I could then finally, because I was still stupid hungry, I ran to the table and I just ate a ton of food because I was so hungry. And then everyone was starting to watch a movie, so I ran into the theater room and I started eating. I started watching the movie with them, and so then I could enjoy the rest of the party, but that was pretty intense. And then, come to find out, a war breaks out across the world, and I'm like, wait, was that why? Or I'm probably just going crazy, but maybe it was because of the war. Who knows? Anyways, so I remember marking the exact day it happened, but I forgot. Oh yeah, it was my sister's birthday, so it was like March. It was like early March, like March 3rd, I think. Sometime around there. Anyways, so if you happen to know what I was praying about, let me know. Yeah, that was like the most recent, like really big event. This night that I explained, I had a similar, but it was very like minimal. It felt more like I was just kind of feeling down. So I was probably just overreacting to my own emotions, because I was, again, I've kind of been at least a little bit primed to kind of, whenever I feel kind of depressed, I'm like, oh no, is it one of those times again? Is it one of those times? Do I need to start praying? So yeah, anyways, that's kind of that. Oh, it didn't stop recording. Okay, so if you have similar stories, let me know in the comments. If you have a framework or a worldview that might make sense for whatever's going on, let me know. If you think I am a psychic, let me know. Descended from a power. If you think I am a jujitsu sorcerer, descended from my mom was a jujitsu sorcerer. She isekai'd to this world. Let me know what you think. If you think I am a psychic from Mob Psycho 100, I can't take it serious. I'm sorry, guys. So, yeah, schizophrenia. Am I right? Anyways, so if you experience ghosts, just remember that they don't have power over you because they're just little ghosty boys, and the only thing they can do is to scare you and convince you to off yourself. So that's how I personally am able to believe in spiritual stuff and not be scared of it. See ya.